never going to get this, a hypey kind of word, quantum jump, but you're going to get this giant leap of value out of something. And it's not just the fact that these technologies exist. It's going to be, men and women like you and me who have 20, 25 years of industry experience. We can then take these tools and really wield them with just an experience that I don't think really can be matched.
I feel like that opening line for every one of them is changes everything.
How are you, Veer?
Busy, just like you.
Yes.
Like everybody else that's probably going to listen to us.
Yeah, and we have a lot to get through today on this episode as well. So we want to make sure to get there. But but you say you're busy. What are you?
I've got to catch a flight. I've got get to Philly by this afternoon and helping out a new client up there as a fractional operator for them and doing some coaching for them as they're tracking towards their next transaction in 18, 24 months.
Yeah. So private equity stuff. Mm. Yeah. It makes the world go round at this point, doesn't it?
It makes the world go round, but
it's everywhere. No, I've got largely the same type of things going on, but I play part-time CFO for my wife and her business. She has a little multi-unit business that's growing pretty rapidly. She just signed literally yesterday the final copy or the fully executed copy of her new lease.
All right.
So that's wonderful, but that means I have to go get the money now. So I'm in full on capital raise mode. I drove to downtown Denver yesterday and sat with a banker friend and just super nice guy. And we're trying to structure something. So that's going to eat up a bunch of time. And then later today, I've got a client meeting as well. Software as a service company, or actually it's a membership based company, but there is a little bit of a software as a service component to it.
Yeah,
but
like a digital product.
It's a digital product. Yeah, that's the better way of positioning it. They kind of have both. So full day. And then we're doing this podcast in the middle of it.
And we're doing this. But, one of the things we're talking about today, a lot of topics, but one of the things is talking about the intersection of the skills and the abilities that we have from the verticals that we've worked in and the new skills and abilities that we can pick up by using some of these tools, and why would we do it? And, what's changed? And you worked on a project, right? We've talked about where you sat down, spun up a SaaS product all by yourself, no developers, no CIO helping you out.
I don't code. As a matter of fact, I explicitly told the model or, the AI overlord that I was, choosing to work with that day. I told it, I don't code. That's not my job. So, I've never really done it professionally. The only thing I could say that I've done professionally is I've written VBA. And not very well. VBA mechanic, not VBA engineer, if that makes sense, So I've never shipped a product. Don't really understand software development lifecycle. All these terms are relatively new to me. I have training as a CFO. I allocate capital. I mitigate risk. I size up risk, before I mitigate it. And, all of those things are just like they were foreign concepts to me, but I'm a lifelong learner, truly. And I'm very intensely interested in technology.
And so we're talking about like using these tools, and the constraint prior was skill, having gone either, from an educational side or from a apprenticeship style side to having skill so that you can go build something. And that's not the barrier anymore. And it's not that you have to go get a book.
No, it's not. But to be fair, that's not really the barrier in finance. If you really want to look at it that way, if you have enough willingness to dive in for a weekend, there are tools out there that help me ship an Excel model a whole lot quicker than I used to. Of course, I got 25 years of experience that allows me to ask it the right questions, just like a developer would have probably done what I did with this software as a service product that I built in 2 hours versus 4 hours or something like that.
Well, I mean, but that's the key piece, right? You asked it, and it may not even be that it was the right questions. You asked it questions. You were curious, right?
Well, I asked it questions. I actually started a whole chat thread that I knew I wouldn't it wouldn't blow up really big because I kept it really constrained just for definitions.
Like technical definitions? Like, yeah, like what's an IDE?
What is an IDE? How does an API actually work? You know, what does CLI mean? You know, all these things. Now, I did this over a year ago now. So I've basically, for more than a year since this AI came out and all of the talk around, you know, how it could help you accelerate, I've basically taught myself about software development in depth. So now I used to know enough to be dangerous. Now I know enough to be a little more dangerous, I guess. I don't know. I have a better way of saying that.
No, but like you've taken that knowledge and then these tools have increased in ability from being able to just answer your questions and educate you to now being able to take on personas, you know, job descriptions, and interact with you towards a goal. And you had some clarity of something that you were trying to build towards, right? You had an idea of a, you know, finished widget that was going to pop out the end of the machine.
Yeah, I would say the constraint around all of this isn't do you know how to code? It's not the skill of coding is not the constraint. It's really more about, and we talked a bit about this yesterday, I think product market fit, and also what problem am I trying to solve? Does the market really like the problem? And then can I go about structuring the product in a way that logically makes sense? That's it.
Yeah. And that means that there's some intellectual curiosity there. You're able to have that like forethought of product market fit.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that I see missing most places too. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to go off on a tangent, but I think the thing that's missing the most is intellectual curiosity. I don't know if that's fear. I don't know if that's, just, I don't know, weariness. You know, like I'm tired at the end of the day. It's like, because this is like the volume of the things that are changing is pretty, I mean, it's significant. In finance language, I would say it is material, the changes that we're starting to see. And if you work 12, 14 hours a day because you work in a pressure cooker of a private equity environment or Fortune 500, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lot of extra, you know, you just need to get the job done. But I just try to encourage people all the time that you got to dig in.
Yeah. Well, people have been listening to us, and we should probably tell them who we are and admit, you know, kind of like, who are these two guys that are just kind of waxing a little bit philosophical on some projects that they're working on. So I'm Veer. I'm a CIO. I've been a consultant for a number of years. I work as a operating partner for private equity companies, helping them align their overall investment thesis and strategy against technology. So this tech part is something that I actually do on a regular basis.
Yeah, I'm Jim, and I'm a CFO. So finance through and through, by training, by application. I'm a practitioner, not necessarily a long history in consulting, but that is what I do now. I bring that 25 years of allocating capital, managing risk, evaluating projects, and, you know, just making sure overall that the balance sheet is always protected. I bring that now to clients that a lot of times are in like a little bit of a chaotic situation. So private equity companies, post acquisition, businesses that are scaling. I have a deep growth background in growth companies. So, I know intimately that scale starts to break a lot of things. And so try to play a little chess with them and try to get them to see, 4 or 5 moves down the road, what this will be if they really are committed to the growth of the company. And so those are the type of things that I do.
And so you're going to hear us on Functional Executives talking about how we're taking new technology, new trends in the market, translating them away from hype into something that drives value in these companies and these clients of ours. And you're going to also hear about how we're using it to drive value for ourselves in both, professional development and personal development. So we're going to jump into some stuff where we talk about today, what does it mean to be building something or to be in the middle of this thing that we keep hearing called vibe coding. And I don't feel like, I hope that doesn't stick. I hope it's not coding with vibes.
No, I don't think it will. As a matter of fact, and I'm not even going to try to remember because I won't, but I think there's already a new term that people are bandying
or something like that.
Yeah, there's something else that people are kind of bandying about now. So, we're not, neither one of us are developers, so we're just trying to make sense of this stuff. I would say though, and you mentioned it earlier, but there is this is new terms that I've learned, by the way. But we have very specific non-goals here. And, that is, we don't want to be a part of the hype. We want to try to figure out, okay, all this stuff's out there. How do we apply it, with our cup of coffee in a corner office at whatever XYZ company we're in right now? How do I actually use this to do something meaningful to add value to that company? And so that's really the non-goal is, we're not saying everything broke and, AI is here to take all our jobs. I don't even think that's true. I don't know about you.
No, I think what we're going to show people is that you are going to get this, a hypey kind of word, quantum jump, but you're going to get this giant leap of value out of something. And it's not just the fact that these technologies exist. It's going to be, men and women like you and me who have 20, 25 years of industry experience. We can then take these tools and really wield them with just an experience that I don't think really can be matched. And so, like in this case, we were talking about that you spent a weekend building, you were coding, but you said you weren't a coder. And you did some testing, you started developing, building, deploying, using these different tools, putting something out there. You were shipping something.
Yeah. No, 100%. And I am just taking a note because there is something that I definitely want to make sure. I'm going to leave it right there, but I have a question for you after we make it through this that I think is really a critical question, especially for your PE and CIO brethren out there, for all of our folks. So yeah, no, listen, it's really simple. Every one of these multi-unit companies out there do end-of-day reports or shift change reports, like every one of them. I mean, like that's the thing. And there are a lot of software solutions out there that do this kind of shift handover, end of day reporting, functionality or capabilities, like within a full suite solution. That's typically only available to like enterprise businesses though. I mean, you have to be of a certain size to have it. Otherwise you're just, sending a Teams message or an email, trying to put some structure around it.
So here is a definite opportunity to do something better, to improve operational efficiency from, hey, I'm just going to send an email and you're going to get what you get. And maybe I can do it and maybe I can't. And, so much variability in the actual, like both the output and the tracking of that output that every multi-unit franchise location group needs.
Yeah, franchise or, even corporate. I mean, but yes, the point is real. It's like there are smaller multi-unit operations that just don't have access to some of these big tools. And with my wife's business, which I talked about earlier, we had the same problem. So it started off, I was just going to do a Teams integration and I was going to make it really kind of like, I don't know, kludgy. Just kind of duct tape some things together, power automate this and do a little bit of this in the background. And okay. But ChatGPT keeps telling me that I over engineer things. That's a legit, but I've got like ChatGPT down on like be super candid and tell me what I don't want to hear mode as best I can.
Do you have to lie down on the couch while it's talking to you?
Sometimes it feels like it. Yes. Sometimes it feels like, oh, wow, that's insightful. Wonder what part of the model found that.
Do you have to go call your mom now? And
I do. And we might need to stop so I can do that. So yeah, but it started off as something that was kind of like okay, this is a nice to have. It's a little bit of a toy. And should I be spending time on this? But I over engineer. ChatGPT tells me that all the time. So I made it and it just kept getting better. And now it's it's like a real thing now. Like other people could use it. Right.
And you did it on your own using, a set of tools. And so like for this, for at least to help people understand, like, what are these tools, right? Because sometimes people just hear ChatGPT and they're like, oh, well, it's that and Copilot.
Yeah. So I used a variety of tools. Again, I'm really curious about what's available. I read Substack, Reddit, and the Wall Street Journal and YouTube. Honestly, I love the Wall Street Journal, but they all have their different places. Like the really like bleeding edge type of stuff is out there on Substack and then also YouTube. You just have to sift through. It's hard to find adults in the room like we're trying to be here that are telling you actual applications. It's usually, a little younger demographic that are hyping things up. So I dove into a mix of those things, filtered what I thought, and then I landed on, I like to use Cursor. You introduced me to Manus, which is actually, I can get to that, but that significantly sped things up. And then I used ChatGPT. So in the first round, it was just ChatGPT and Cursor. That's it. And then I set all that up the way that it needed to be set up based on some of these Substack. Actually, Anthropic had some really good blogs or blog posts or white papers. So I read those, and that is what gave me this kind of workflow. And then I've iterated on it like, probably 5 times on like how I'll, continue to improve this with different tools. Because some of them are definitely easier for people like me that don't know code or really IT in depth.
But, and the point of asking that is just the fact that like this is a legitimate piece of software as a service that you've been able to build, deploy, put out there, and
it looks
are actually
good,
using.
it?
And it looks great. And we've had this conversation that I feel like there's a commercial viability to this that should be pursued.
I think you also told me, like just full disclosure, that it could probably be destroyed in a weekend by some behemoth enterprise company.
It could. And there's, I work in healthcare. A big chunk of my career has been spent in that space. And it's a very cautionary tale that we're seeing right now in the news where these AI-powered summarization and or tools that would do some diagnostic work for in the healthcare space. The big company sat back, let a lot of entrepreneurs do the product market fit, test a bunch of things out. They observed was sticking. A couple of people have gotten lucky and got acquired, but almost everybody else just got absolutely just jumped over because they were able to platform. If you run all the software inside of a hospital, they're not going to add another piece of software. They just want another tab inside their software that does whatever it is that, was being done. And so, but I do think that we're in a time where there's viability for something like this. Maybe you luck out and somebody buys you, and maybe you luck out and you have a little, recurring revenue for a while. But here you saw a business problem. You built something to solve it. You're deriving value from it today. And potentially you could help other people derive value from it. And you did it again in that spare marginal time. Maybe instead of reading the next, great American novel or whatever that you could have spent time, in the evenings doing, you did this.
I will say though, family's super important to me. So I always make time for the kids' soccer and whatever that is. But yeah, there's a trade-off in all those extra things. So I'm not reading whatever the latest business book is. I'm not reading that, I'm not listening to a ton of podcasts that I really like to listen to because I'm spending most of my time with ambient music on, sitting in a dark room and going, all right, okay, that fits there. And how do I do this? And so one of the things that I did that I thought was interesting is, and one of the things that I have incorporated into my workflow is finding some of these bleeding edge, thought leaders on AI and agentic AI and all this, the newer things. I've been taking their seminal white paper or their, whatever it was that they've put out there. I've been dropping that, and that's what I did on this one. And I dropped that into Chat GPT or in a model, and I go, I want to do that, but I don't know how to do it. And that's what got me set up down this path of, okay, Chat GPT is going to be up on this window, and I am going to tell Chat GPT to be my chief technology officer, CTO. So there you go. That's your role. I'm also going to tell ChatGPT I'm the CEO. I set the vision, product vision. I don't know. And you follow my lead. I know where the problems are. I know what to build. I've got the money. You work for me. And then using some of this other kind of best in class ways of working with AI and building agents, I had ChatGPT with that white paper build out a series of agents that I then put into Cursor. And so what my development process was for a long time was, okay, here's the feature I need to build. Here's what I need to have. I need you to write out a complete Cursor prompt in a spec, or not really a spec, but a sprint for this particular feature. And then I would drop that into Cursor, and then each one of those Cursor agents. So when the architect was done with the plan, the CTO, I didn't drop that. That's the one touch point. I dropped that back into ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, yeah, they got it right. Or a lot of times ChatGPT would say, no, they don't. They missed a key component. You got to put that back in there. Cool. So I put that back in there. The architect ran again. And then once it was signed off on, the front end agent would finish their work, send it to the back end, send it to the QA, send it to the verifier. And then I'd close the loop by saying, here's the output, ChatGPT CTO. Did we get it?
I love it so much because you went down this road of following kind of almost a replacement of a lot of human functions, right? In regular corporate America, when we're doing projects or we hire a development contractor to come in and do a project for us, they have these roles, they have these, there's somebody who does architecture, and there's a system design person, there's a front end person, there's somebody who specializes in databases. Sometimes it's the same person, but often in a large organization, we specialize those roles. And you've worked in these large organizations where these people have been line items on your budget.
That's 100% it. And the one thing that I will tell you about, quote, onboarding a new agent versus a human, I just point them to I point them to these files that contain, here's what we're doing. And it immediately knows, like, kind of the brand identity that we're going for. There was one document. So in this particular SaaS product, the email is really, and saving a structure, really it's the email though, is like a contract with the customer, right? So it's a very simple workflow, but the thing that has to be nailed is the email. It has to look the same, and it has to provide some actionable insight to owners. Otherwise, why buy it?
Right.
So one of the first things, and I think ChatGPT suggested this to me, and that's just the flavor I was using, was why I keep saying that name. But the model suggested to me, oh, you know what? You need a constitution for this email. And I said, oh yeah, that is good. So we created a full constitution markdown file. And then my idea was, okay, so before the architect ever writes the spec for the sprint, it needs to read that every time, like full stop.
No, that's like that. The idea of the model having memory and context and having the wholeness of a human being is still something that you have to today with most of these tools. You're having to do for it. But I mean, you're doing it in a little bit unnatural way, but what you're doing is you're rebooting it each time, right? And you're giving it, but instead of starting as a baby, it starts as a 30-year-old every time you hit the button. And so you're giving it the constitution and rules and rules of engagement and you're giving it access to all the work that's being done before so that it can learn what happened, so that it can catch up to the story, right? So it gets a last week on kind of an update for itself, and then it can keep moving forward. Those and so if I jump in and start telling a story, I took a very different route in building a tool, and which was both of us have said, we love our families. We're involved in our communities. We've got, the calendar gets full. Everybody, we're no different than anyone else. Everybody's calendar is full. There's not enough hours in the day. We're all trying to figure out, if we've been lucky enough that our, physical needs are being met by our jobs, then what we have left to now maximize is our time. And so I felt like I was running and chasing, and I wanted more time. I wanted to figure out how to optimize my time. And, my years of doing, early in my career, having a day runner and Franklin Covey, book with the binder with the
way back machine, man.
Yeah, it is way back machine. And then the last probably 10 years using getting things done as a evolution of that, and using electronic lists to manage my life. Still, was now hitting a point of like, well, now this is getting like difficult to work with. And so I wanted to solve this problem. And as I saw these tools coming up, I'm like, oh, this would be great. Can I build something that, and so what you've heard me talk about, I was kind of joking about like, I want to be Tony Stark, and I wanted Jarvis to do this for me. And I wanted to have this smart, thing that knew me and knew how I worked and how I thought and knew my details and could coach me and tell me what to do next and could go off and do work for me. And so, the more I dug into that, I realized, oh, I'm not Tony Stark. I'm just like everybody else who's in technology. A lot of people are building this, and
yeah, a ton. I think I sent you a few articles.
Yeah, and I mean, and you go on GitHub and there people have open repos of things that they've built, and so one, I'm like, I still want to do this. I feel like I can't call it Jarvis just because it feels it's yeah, I don't know. It feels like very, very basic. And
like
so,
on the nose.
And so I'm like, no.
Well, I called mine Sam. And that's
Sam.
Well, that's the lady from the Her movie. With Joaquin Phoenix and
ScarJo's character.
Yeah, ScarJo, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
I don't think we're cool enough to say ScarJo, so we should probably not do that again.
Okay.
But keep going.
Okay, all right, we'll stop. So I'm calling mine. I'm like, mine's Cyrano. So I figured I'd go with something.
I love that name, man. I think that's smart.
I just want something whispering in my ear over here and giving me clues. But what I did here was I wanted something to start with that was looking at my to-do list, my future to-do list, my goals, and some of my contacts and networking, and some way to stitch this together. And there's many people building many very, very complicated tools around this with lots of layers and lots of technical depth and complexity. But I just wanted to... Go ahead.
Sorry. You know, every time I send you an article, you know how you always tell me you just sent me down another rabbit hole. Mm-hmm. You should call it Sisyphus. Because I feel like you're pushing this thing up the hill every day and then starting over.
Oh,
that's a problem with this. I mean, like, that's a problem with this whole limitless pill idea.
It is, right? I mean, it's almost like a stack with the limitless pill, and if you have any form of ADHD spectrum in you, you're wanting to do stuff, you're wanting to do lots of stuff. I have felt a little bit like I've started this project over several times, but I went down the route of like, well, instead of going with I'm going to create a bunch of agents and build this, I'm using a tool. I'm using Manus, which recently got purchased by Meta, and they have a agentic platform where it works things through to completion all the way through. It will build and test and code and save your code and do pull requests and do all that stuff in one shot. And the secret to that, I think, or being somewhat successful with it is, over the course of my career, I've watched paradigms of how we write software and how we manage and project manage teams change radically. And, but early in my career, the idea was still waterfall. You go deep on on requirements. You spend a lot of time. You validate. You write corner cases. You think through exceptions, and then you give it to a developer because that was a precious resource, and we didn't want to rework things. And the idea of iterating was not really like part of that. And so, but what that did do early in my career is build in this muscle memory for like, well, good requirements look kind of a very specific way. And so I feel like that's just a function of having, been there, done that, and have the t-shirt.
How does that translate? I'm curious, how does that translate to requirements? So that same exact process works well with AI, or are there tweaks?
It works great with AI. And the idea with it is,
but there's not any tweaks. Like you can't be more vague, or
you can. But I think for me, getting trying to one shot some of this work, where I give it all the same thing. So it's not just requirements, right? There were functional requirements, right? But then there were technical requirements. And again, having the background meant I could define those up front instead of letting the AI come up with architecture and solutions on its own. I was able to kind of give it guardrails, right?
So your requirements building is still like the crux of the work. It still takes up the most time, probably, is what I'm hearing.
It does.
But what is are you able to iterate quicker?
You are, because the build cycle is crazy fast. And so it took me for one project, which is kind of like a CRM for a company that's doing some care management. It took me an hour to really sit down, think about what tools I wanted it to use, what kind of database I wanted it to use, think through things that are pretty natural for me to think about what are these objects, what are these entities that that represent a customer and a lead, and the demographics around that customer, and what was the workflow I needed it to do, what the end user have to do. Took an hour, then 20 minutes later, working software, deployed.
So its requirements are an hour, given the assumption that you have 20 plus years of experience in a discipline. It took you an hour. What does that take not 20 years of experience guy?
Well,
person.
But not 20 years experience guy who's curious, who understands that part of it is just knowing the right question to ask, right? I mean, if for you did very similar. You said to your language model, "You're my CTO." And you gave it that role. You gave it the role that I have in what I'm doing. And so you made it 80% of the way there just by, asking it to do the things that I would do.
Yeah. I still think, though, there were several points in the process. I'm curious how you fixed this, but there's several points in the process that, I would spend for an hour and a half to fix something. And I don't think you would.
There were times I did. Those are learning things. I think you and I have talked about with these tools. I mean, they've evolved even in the last 6 months as we've used them, that, asking it to fix something is not always the right thing to ask it, and being able to feed it exact error messages and being able to grab things out of the console and the stack and give it to it, or we're getting like down in the weeds with it, but we are one of the more important things that I think I've talked to several people about, where they're just like, oh, AI is great until it's not great. And people have told me it craps out on you. And I'm like, no, you are right. It does. Because it's like you have somebody working all day long. And by the end of the day, you're a little tired. Your brain's a little mushy. You're a little spent. In a way, there's a humanness to what AI and these large language models are set up to do, where it gets a little mushy at the end of the day. And so you have a couple options.
That is maybe the best analogy I've heard for that. Keep going.
No,
so you're smart.
So you get to the end and you're like, oh, now I'm not getting the same answers. The quality's not good. It's not answering my questions the way I want it to. It's messing up. And so there's two kind of things you could do. You could try to start over, but if you start over fresh, the context gets lost. We're seeing two different models here for trying to preserve what we call context rot, where the AI has been treating the earliest part of the conversation with the most weight, statistical weight, and by the end it's treating the next things with less statistical weight. So we can either ask it to do a summarization or a compaction of this information and move it to a new fresh thread and get it to kind of start over, but you have to have this handoff document that says, what's everything we did? What's the narrative? What are the system events that happened? What did we learn? What were bugs that we fixed? What was coaching that, you have to give it enough onboarding material for the next person who's going to work on your project. But you give that, you extract that out of the thread, you start a new thread, you're going to get, fresh, it's like it's running with fresh legs underneath you on a new race. And so I had to learn that to make it do that when I saw my project start to get mushy. And
and you usually know that happens because everything, like, you'll type in something and you'll prompt it, and then like 30 minutes later it'll come back with a prompt. Go ahead.
I had the AI come back to me because it was a bug I was trying to get it to fix, and it wasn't fixing it, and it was a deployment bug. So it had to do with getting things put out onto Microsoft Azure. So the AI also had to know enough about Azure to coach me through the deployment process and to manage the deployment process. It try this now, try this now, try this now. We went multiple loops, and it was one of the more shocking things that I've seen come up in the thing. It came up and said, "I'm sorry. I have failed you. I'm clearly not able to figure out how to deploy this piece of software." It's what it said in the chat thread to me.
It's wild.
And I'm like, it is self-aware enough to both apologize to me and to say that it has exhausted whatever statistical ability it thinks it had at winning, and said, I'm calling this game.
So, I just thought of something that I'm going to so the way I handled what you're talking about is that's why I use sprints.
Yeah.
I had, as soon as we were done with the sprint, there was a sprint handoff, and then it needed to go back through and basically weight all of the foundational files again in the new chat. And so it always knew what we had just done, what we were trying to accomplish, and here's where the whole full project is from start to finish. But at the beginning of every chat, that's kind of that sprint methodology, which we're all probably pretty familiar with at this point. That's how I got around it. But one thing I thought about was, I wonder if at the end, to get a better handoff, and I don't know if either of us have tried this or if somebody's probably tried it, but I wonder if you could say, hey, I don't care, take a little bit longer, but I want you to weight everything in the project equally and give me the handoff. Or I want you to, weight the last third of our conversation more. I wonder if the model would do that.
I don't know. I mean, I think, what we're seeing as people are building things is that this idea of handing off knowledge, memory, context is definitely something people are trying, 6-7 different ways at handling and to different depths. It is the prescribed solution, though. I think what you were able to do, and I've talked to other colleagues who were able to build things, who built things that, because you took an iterative approach. They weren't
as good as mine, though.
Theirs was not. It was not as good. But
I don't want to hear about your other colleagues. I'm the only colleague.
That's right. I remember the look on your face when I said I had lunch the other day with another CFO friend of mine here in town, and
I was like, I'm the only CFO you have lunch with. I know I'm 1,500 or 1,600 miles away, but come on, man.
I will come there for a burrito. And so, but I think what we're getting at here is that there is some very specific things, right? We talked about this podcast being something where we give some practical advice. We've gone pretty deep into a kind of practical things. And if I kind of lift it up a layer here, I think it is that if there are folks who are having trouble, folks who are kind of going in that direction of like, oh, it's good until it's not. I'm like, well, part of it is that you're not using it right, or you haven't learned that there are solutions to when you feel like it's drifting in its accuracy and its ability to drive value for you. But at the end of the day, what you and I have both seen is that we are capable of building things, not just because I do technology, but I can build several things. You've built several things. The economy of what we're doing here is the parallel that occurred to me the other day was I was with my oldest girl, and she's a Girl Scout, and we had Girl Scout World Thinking Day, where girls learn about other countries around the world, and the Girl Scouts troops all present information to each other. And my daughter and her troop had Bangladesh, and that is my heritage, and so it was easy to be able to pull a bunch of stuff together from our house and from Grandma and Grandpa's house. One of the things that Bangladesh is known for is there's a Nobel winner, Muhammad Yunus, who built the concept of microfinance. right? These microfinance loans that were given to women, especially in villages, enabling them to build a business and to sustain their families. But you know, the macro concept there is a small targeted investment has value. And, you know, when we work in private equity and stuff, we talk about projects, we set, these are big projects, right? We're normally working with mid-market, we're talking top lines of 500 million or more. The numbers are not small that we discuss on a day-to-day basis. And
no, I mean, an ERP implementation is probably maybe north of $3 million at that size company. Easy. Depending
right?
on how messy it is. Sure.
And so this macro concept of small investment having great value, in a way, where we've landed with large language models and this agentic coding and vibe coding and is kind of a equivalent to that. We are able to invest in small increments into things that have great value and long-term value, where before we might have written off making small investments, saying small investments equal small outcomes. And now small investments could have great outcomes. And, a little bit of it is a function of right place, right time, but a little bit of it is just understanding what we started with. Did we pick something that has value?
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's near and dear to my heart because I'm in finance and that's all I'm ever looking for, especially, well, I mean, in any environment where the company is going to, or is contemplating exit, that's what I'm thinking about, is like, how does enterprise value go up based on whatever project it is? So we know we can, like to your point, we know we can build all this stuff. How do we sift through it and find the stuff that we should build? And I think personally, I mean, we don't have time to go into it today, but I think that might be a topic that you and I should explore more deeply because this is impacting finance, right? Like if everybody can build something, it's like, well, I mean, like, why am I spending my resources on that when if I build, so why am I worried about this back office solution? And as a CFO, I always want to worry about back office solutions, right? I mean, that's my bent, right? But I have to have an enterprise view. So this marketing thing over here, that's actually the real driver. How do I do that? And so defining value, and figuring out where you want to allocate these scarce resources. And then for the IT side of the house, the question that I wrote down that I wanted to ask you about.
All right.
And you're not going to be able to get to it today. So This is just like,
I'll do a hot take on it maybe. Yeah,
we accidentally are teasing, I think, a future conversation. But what does this do to, we talk about it in terms of shadow IT, but forget shadow IT. Let's just call it something that everybody will recognize, which is building stuff and the IT doesn't know about it. And security, especially in these private equity companies, because a big part of the value is, do you have your house in order? Especially when it comes to cybersecurity. Nobody wants to talk about it. It's the least sexy thing on the IT list. And it's arguably one of the top two most important things.
No, that one is a good conversation to have. I know when I get into the conversation about security and cybersecurity and with folks and there are certain pieces of it that are just table stakes. We all know it. And there's conversation to be had about that. But we also want to always try to remember that the weakest link in any of that is still the person. And so, we can get a little bit wrapped around the axle about, people building things that IT doesn't know about. People are printing things that finance and HR doesn't know about. There's pieces of paper, I've worked in ISO organizations that had very strict desk lockdown rules,
Sure.
No loose paper, anything that was printed had to say uncontrolled copy on it. But rarely do you see organizations having that level of controls in place in an office, even, setting. So I know I've talked to many of my colleagues on the IT side who are afraid of what this conversation that we've been having will cause. And I think we can talk about it more. But the fact is putting your head in the sand, and just like saying like it's not there, or I have to ignore it, and using kind of the excuse of security as this like nebulous thing that's going to get you is, I think, a disservice in the bigger picture with the finance side. And, as we try to figure out like, how do we drive value for our companies?
Yeah, I just think, me personally, we've seen this in technology several times. Mm-hmm. Like every time, like email came out, same exact issue. Cloud computing came out, same exact issue. I mean, so I think, I think you got to embrace it. I do think there's an argument to be made that you need to attack it with a little more urgency than some of these other things, because it does feel like the capability shift is much, much greater than a lot of these other things. And so now people have these tools that we just talked about for an hour. Yeah. And it's a conversation. It is definitely a conversation worthy of having. Yeah, at the company, at the most senior level of the company, and they need to have it pretty quickly.
Yeah, the genie is out of the bottle at this point, or right? Pandora's box has been opened. It's out there. To pretend like it's not, and to then ask folks to ride around with an arm tied behind their back, I mean, is only going to be viable for so long.
Yeah. So just to kind of close this out, we covered a lot of ground, but I mean, we stayed pretty tight, I think, on, the topics. So basically, to sum up, we can build a lot of things now. We have proof points. We gave real life examples of things. I think we glossed over the fact that you said, oh yeah, I built a CRM. So anyway, like we gotta come back to that. We'll come back to that kind of side. Yeah, because it's like, oh yeah, I built a point of sale this weekend. It's like, holy what? And that's going to happen.
That's 100% going to happen, and I think we need to be ready for it and ready to not necessarily just sign off on all of it, but you use the word often, right? Just like approach it with curiosity.
Yeah, 100%. So we covered, hey, we can build things, and then we've got to be really, I think that now it's like, is it worth building needs to be, you guys can frame that up as any different way you want. Product market fit. Is it the wisest use of internal resources? If you're looking at it internally, at just whatever it is, I think there's a lot more time that needs to be spent there, but we also have a couple of other really, really good topics that I think we can explore much more deeply.
All right. Well,
hey man, I hope you have a good flight.
I'm going to try. You have, hopefully all the banking and finance stuff works out. And
yeah, I hope so too. I mean, it kind of has to. So,
I think, we'll just, will that kind of stuff into existence and
yes, we're going to
wrestle it to the ground. So
I've got it on my vision board up here. I don't. It's all Lamborghinis. That's all my vision board is. Oh. I don't have a vision board. I just, it was a bad joke that kept getting worse.
Somebody
has a vision board and hates me now.
Probably. And yeah, I'm sure we have managed to offend at least one person along the way. Sorry, not sorry, but we are. We hope that we're giving some value, cutting through some of the noise that we've seen in the marketplace, real life examples, real world, real corporate examples of ways that we can use this technology. And next time we'll figure out another, interesting angle to dive into.
Yeah. So if you made it to this point, thank you for listening, and we'll see you back on the next episode.